Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing extremely well. Today, another really exciting interview and a really relevant interview as well. We've managed to get ourselves a real live AH-64 Apache pilot, and we've got Rex. Say hello, Rex.
Yeah. Cheers to everybody on the Grim Reapers. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, wonderful, thank you. Now, the reason this is so relevant at the moment is because just a couple of weeks ago, we've had announced to us that we're getting a high-fidelity Apache in DCS, which is great. So the first thing we've had to do is reach out, find pilots, and off we go. So first of all, Rex, I'm going to just read out your synopsis so people know a bit about you, and then we'll carry on. So, born and raised in Texas, graduated from flight school in 1990, flew UH-1 Hueys in primary and instruments, then tracked Scouts AH-64A AC, then onto AH-1 Cobra Mod S, only about 80 hours. Then went through the AH-64A model transition and then onto the AH-64 Armament Officer course. 2011 went through the AH-64D Longbow transition, and I'm a graduate of the US Army Safety Center and retired as a CW4 Battalion Safety Officer. My combat time in northern Afghanistan, OEF4, 2003-2004, flew mostly night QRF for troops in contact and some direct operation missions in support of ground forces. Escorted medevac and air assault missions as well, retired in 2016. Brilliant.
Yeah, cheers.
Really good, that is. Out of interest, we've actually got another Apache pilot that flies with us in Grim Reapers. Now, he didn't want to come on, because some people just don't like, being public, and that's absolutely fine. So that's fine. Interestingly, he's flown almost identical to you, starting on Hueys, I believe he was, then AH-1, and then AH-64. So is that the natural progression of...
I just kind of lucked out. There are a lot of guys that I knew that were scout pilots that wound up going guns. And so it just happened to be, the way my unit was doing everything. They were getting rid of the Cobras at the time, and I had a chance to still fly the Cobra for about 8 months, 9 months before we started turning our Cobras in and then receiving our Apaches. So it just kind of happened that way.
Okay. Now, as you probably know, the questions that we ask are ones that we've allowed the valued viewers to ask. That means sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're really bad, and sometimes they're just downright ugly. We'll just have to see how it goes. So we'll figure it out as we go. We're aware, obviously, there won't be some stuff you can talk about because, for obvious reasons. Before we get cracking, anything from your end?
Well, a couple of things. I am, and I think this is something that you and I have not even spoken about. I did get permission to let you know, because of relevance. I am I'm part of the team with Eagle Dynamics and Matt Wagner working on the program.
How about that?
Yeah,
that's cool.
So I did have to sign an NDA, so I can't really...
it sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can't really go into it, but I did get permission from Wags to let you know I'm part of the team.
Oh, that's great. And that's really good to see when we talk about community. This is exactly what it is. We've got the ED guys, we've got you, the real guys, we've got us, the pretend guys, and we all kind of go around together. So that's great. Right, well, that couldn't be more pertinent.
There you go.
Okay, we're going to crack on. Question 1 is from our own beanbag ninja, Steve. I heard that Apache pilots learn to use their eyes independently to use a display over one eye. Is this true? Do you get to choose which eye has the display over it? Are we talking about that little green thing that comes down that I never really understood?
It's called an HDU or an HMD. So HDU is helmet display unit. So it's a monocle on your right eye, and it's only on your right eye. And so you can flip it away from your eye or have it on your eye. But it's always has the symbology. You fly with it day or night because it does have all the symbology. At night, obviously it's got the FLIR that you're flying off of. But no, it's always on your right eye, and you do kind of. I know it's crazy, but you do kind of learn to use your eyes independently. So to speak, right eye flying and then using your left eye to kind of look down inside the cockpit.
Roger, interesting. I'm just looking on. I mean, this is from a game; it's not from real life. But here it looks like a kind of a little fighter aircraft green HUD that's kind of that you can see. And this can see as airspeed is whatever that is, sync rate and a target and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of information on the HDU. The one thing that I've seen that And one thing that I have mentioned to ED about is that the games you always see are green. That's not AH-64 world. That's night vision goggles. Whereas the Apache community, it's all thermal. So it's not a green screen on your eye.
Right.
So it's all thermal.
So what does that look like? What can we expect to see? What does thermal look like? Like white for hot, black for dark?
Yeah. Absolutely. And you can switch back and forth, flying, white hot, black hawk, whatever you want to fly. So if you're going out on a night mission, and you've got the HDU on your eye, and you've got Pinvis and TADS working on you, you're going to see, like I said, that thermal image, which the advantage to that is you don't, compared to NVGs, you don't need any illumination outward source. So you on a zero illum night, you're getting the same picture from a zero illum night versus 100% moon. The moon doesn't have any effect on thermal.
Interesting. So this sounds like this aircraft's really designed to properly operate at night then, without much loss of.
I can tell you, Cap, probably my last 5 years flying the longbow, I would say 80% of my time was all at night.
Right. And it makes sense, because if you can see and they can't, bonus.
Absolutely. And we got to a point where back in the old days in the A model, we would go out and do check rides during the day and night. We got to a point where we did all check rides at night, because the premise is if you can do it at night, you can certainly do it during the day.
Right, absolutely. And the last bit of that question was, do you get to choose which eye has it, or is it always going to be over the right?
It's always going to be over the right eye. And if I can have a little... So this was my helmet for the HDU. So as I put down the visor, you can see where it's cut out a little bit.
Sorry to interrupt, Cap. There's nothing to see on the stream.
So that you can see that, which is where the HDU comes up. So that kind of gives you a little, a little idea. So same way that. So that was my day visor. This was my night visor. So this right here is where your NVGs are going to be. So flip downs, or you can do the HDU the same way, and you can see the cutout there.
Yeah, awesome.
So everything's on the right-hand side.
Awesome. Okay, that makes sense. Right. Okay, thank you for that. Question 2. I've heard stories of the piles of blades at Bastion, not sure what that means, from the Helis worn out from the sand. Did you experience this yourself? Does the AH-64 tend to eat through them when flying in Afghanistan? Also was, brackets, I think this is also called glassing, this an issue for engine power or how you flew in the desert conditions? I've heard stories from the Brits that a Chinook was flying through a sandstorm using its front wheels to find the dunes. And that's from our Ghost Fox.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I can't speak to what the Chinook was doing with its wheels, but I can tell you, before we deployed, the leading edge of the blades, they had a special tape that they put 3 layers of it on, and that was specifically for the pitting of the blades. So as it's going around, all that sand and dust was eating the leading edges of the blades. And so that is absolutely true. And the glassing was a kind of a phenomenon where the sand is so fine over there, and obviously inside the engine cowling, the temperatures get warm. So what it was doing is actually turning that sand to glass.
Wow.
And so there was instances of that actually happening. I never saw it per se. I did see the pitting of the blades, but the glassing, so that did occur on some aircraft.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay,
yeah.
Very good. So I guess this is just the kind of thing they have to worry about in the desert. I wonder, I want to ask the question to an airplane tech now, whether they get any kind of similar problems with plane jet engines and stuff like that, but I guess that'll have to wait.
And Cap, it was so interesting. Our crew chiefs and our ground crew were they were so amazing. And some of the things that they came up with, we had some air intakes on just some computer areas on the aircraft and some vents. And we found that they were asking their wives to bring or to send pantyhose over.
Okay.
Because they found out that they could cover those fans and outlets with pantyhose, and that would help. You would still get the airflow, but it was so fine that it would help keep the sand out.
That's genius.
I mean, it was just amazing, some of the things they came up with.
Yeah, isn't it funny? You've got millions and millions and millions of pounds worth of technology, but it's just not really made per se for this part of the world. So you just find a way around it, don't you?
It's a harsh environment.
Okay, very good. Right, let's start with the inevitable questions. Did you ever get hit with a rocket or some bullets? And if you got hit, are you having any kind of backup system for an engine or something like that? That's from Black Snow.
Yeah, that's a great question, Black Snow. I was never hit with an RPG. I had several of them shot at me. Most of the time, well, actually all of the times that they initially shot, we never knew. The guys that we were covering on the ground was telling us that they were shooting at us because we always kept our speed up. And so, an RPG is unguided. So, it's trying to, lead an aircraft flying fairly fast. So they would always go off behind us. As far as the bullets, never had bullets in the aircraft. My wingman took about 7 or 8. And I had to follow him back to one of the fobs, because he was shot up pretty good. So, and he started having a lot of systems fail on him and everything. So, yeah, it happens.
There's a program, kind of a documentary / film, and forgive me, I think it might have been Wings of the Apache, but no, it's not. It's something else. But it was shot from kind of half documentary, half made up footage from the kind of front of the aircraft at night over Baghdad. I think this is the second. I think this is the second Gulf War. There was about 8 AH-64s going in, and then they got absolutely, in the first wave, absolutely shot to pieces by
they did.
everything.
One of my instructor pilots was on that on a mission very similar, and I mean, he had his TADS bucket blown off. He lost his pinvis. He was the only thing he had was he had backup goggles, and they wound up having to come home. But yeah, they were waiting for him. They got ambushed, and it was pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, testament to the vehicle though. Like I said, I think all of these vehicles got hit, including some of the humans. Everyone actually survived, but only just. And it gives you an idea of how shot up these vehicles were. Yeah, I think I'm right in saying that they all made it back to wherever they were trying to get to.
They did,
and that's pretty.
And
yeah,
one guy did get hit pretty bad, and I know he was physically hit himself, and he survived.
Yeah, so that's good. Okay, well, I guess in a way that's kind of what they were designed to do as well. Yeah. Do they have any armor at the bottom of there, or is it not armored?
Some, especially where the crew compartment is, it is, but there's still a lot of exposed stuff under the fuselage.
Yep. Because I remember seeing the damage. There were bullets going through cables and...
Oh, yeah. Especially the tail boom.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Right. Do you always have the same Copilot and helicopter airframe, or does it change on the type of mission from Black Snow again?
Black Snow. So the way we did it, and I can only just speak to how our unit set it up and the training program is, we really tried to fly with the same crew. So it was myself and a guy that I had flown scouts with for many years, and but he was new to the Apache community. So, but he flew in the front seat. I flew in the back seat, and pretty much every mission that we went on, we did together. I think it's really important, especially in tandem seat aircraft, whether it's a Cobra or an Apache, to really feel comfortable with the guy or girl you're flying with. Because, and one of the things that people don't understand, when you're flying an Apache in the front seat or the back seat, you can't see what the other person's doing. So you really have to have a trust, especially at night on top of the trees or low level you just really have to have a lot of confidence with the other person that you're flying with. So yes, as far as the aircraft, we had our names on the aircraft, but that was specifically on maintenance, which ones were up, which ones were down. So, I'd fly an aircraft that has somebody else's name on it. So, that's just kind of the way it worked.
Well, John, I suppose we're going to see exactly the same thing when we get it, because, I'm guessing here, but presumably we're going to have 2 humans in it, one front, one rear, and we do have vehicles like that at the moment, and it's absolutely key that they, get on with each other, right, and have that kind of chemistry, if that's the right word?
Absolutely. Because, so, yeah, there's just a trust and a camaraderie with you that each one of you have with each other. And I noticed, watching y'all's videos, like when you're flying in the F-14 and you're Rio, you fly with a lot of the times a guy that is really calm. Y'all know each other, you know exactly what to do, and so that's really important. So you can relate exactly to that concept.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. Very good. Okay, question 5 from The Saint. Do you think the Apache would have benefited from having been fitted with retractable landing gear?
I've thought about that. No, I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it's more electronics. It's more systems that you have to worry about going out. Secondly, the landing gear on the Apache is rated, I think it was like 10 Gs or something like that for a survivable crash. If you're going down, especially at night, if you're low to the ground, the last thing you need to be worried about is trying to put your gear down. Right. You're overloaded. You've got too many things going on. It's just, it's one less thing you have to worry about. So no, I would say, absolutely not.
Yeah, now we've got a direct comparison here. We'd say, roughly speaking, the Russian equivalent would be the Ka-50, which we've had for years, for whatever reason. We've had it for years. Now, that does have fully retracting landing gear.
Yes.
I don't know why. Maybe it makes it go faster or whatever. However, for some, and I don't get this, it's a mentality thing. I and my boys half the time forget to put the landing gear up and or down. Now, we never make the mistake in an aeroplane. In an aeroplane, it's ingrained in your brain. The gear go up, the gear go down. In a helicopter, half the guys will just fly around with their gear down because it's not something you think about. All the other helicopters we have are skids or non-retractable. So it's just, I don't know, it's an interesting thing. But and I'll just relate back to a few questions ago. The video I was talking about, Apache Warrior, thank you. Stream.
Yes, that's what it was. And I saw it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, and I was just looking at the landing gear. It looks pretty, like you said, it looks like it's there to take a beating. There's no kind of, it doesn't look stiff. It looks like it's supposed to go and kind of crush inwards.
It actually crashes underneath. It gives into, there's some areas that it gives into to, that's the other kind of part of the crash worthiness survival of the aircraft.
Right. Well, I will be testing our digital version of that to breaking. I can guarantee you that, on purpose or not on purpose. We'll see.
Yeah, I hear you.
Right. Question 6 from Baldy64. Baldy64. How did you cope with the cognitive load? Multiple radios, multiple sensors, coordinating tasks with your pilot, Copilot, etc. Did it ever get easier, or was it always something you had to concentrate on?
Well, that's another really good question. Yes, it's very tough, and you learn to definitely multitask quite a bit. And then therein lies that crew coordination. So, for example, the guy that I flew with, we would take turns back and forth flying, whether he was flying the aircraft from the front seat or I was flying from the back seat. But one of the things that we did is whoever was flying on the controls, the other person did the radios. and it's just we just went, we automatically knew to do that with one another, and it's just dividing up tasks within the cockpit. I think one of the things that we had happen, we had a very senior instructor pilot, and we had a weak front seater, and he was task saturated in the back seat because he was really having to do so much, and he had he was doing a underground effect hover, trying to look for some and this was not overseas, this was stateside on a training mission. He was trying to look for some pieces or some vehicles, and it was at night. And what he didn't realize, because he was so task saturated in the back seat, he had a slight descent coming down, and before he realized it, he had a blade strike with the trees. So it definitely happens. I'm not going to say it gets easier, but you just learn to really do it, and some are better than others. And I just the way I always like to do it is just dividing the task between the crew.
I mean, so for instance, in our sim, if we were in a two-seater plane, usually the tasks would be, you would just know that the Rio does this bunch of stuff, the pilot does this bunch of stuff, and rarely do they merge. What I heard from you is that it's a bit more dynamic there, where you can share tasks a bit more, so it's not so it's more dynamic and less set in stone. Is that true, or did I hear that wrong?
That's true, and generally, my front seater would be looking at stuff with the TADs, and I would be looking around close to the aircraft, because I would have the gun. So if I was flying and I could use the WAS switch, which is the weapons action switch, and I could just turn it on and fire a burst of 30 in the direction of, let's say I'm flying over a ridge line and I come across someone and he just starts firing, I can lay down immediate suppression while I'm flying. And I would see that by the time I would have to tell the front seater to find it, we'd be past him. So, he's looking forward, I'm looking around. And, one of the things that people don't understand, I can fire every weapon from the back seat that the front seater can. And the front seater can fire everything. The biggest thing is he has the optics and the laser. So I could fire if my front seater was shot, I could fire a Hellfire from the back seat if I had somebody else lazing.
I mean, that's one of the fascinating things about this vehicle. I just found out about this a few days ago, that in a traditional doctrine would be you have the pilot flies the plane, the gunner fires the guns, end. This aircraft is, like you said, not fully, but almost fully interchangeable, in that the pilot can also fire the weapons. And can the gunner also fly the plane?
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't that interesting?
Absolutely. Yeah, the front seater, as a matter of fact, that's the other thing, is if you're on, I think the longest mission I had was 3 bags of gas, and it was about 10 hours. And we were just flying up, we were in northern Afghanistan, and we were kind of doing aerial reconnaissance for our guys, and you can't, you have to divide that flying up, or you get so exhausted.
Right. So, and this is obviously designed into the aircraft. Just to kind of finish this section off, any idea behind the doctrine that made them to design it like that? Is it survivability or?
I don't know specifically, but a Hind is definitely a flying tank.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Right. Where did we get to? 7. This is from our own Ito, who is an F-16 maintainer. In your opinion, which did you like better to fly and or use, the AH-1 or AH-64A, however you quantify that?
I would definitely say the 64, the Apache. The one thing, and that was mainly because of the rotor system. Rotor system on an Apache being fully articulated versus a semi-rigid rotor system is a lot more forgivable. So you can get yourself into some situations, that with a Cobra, you've got to be real careful to not have any negative G's or negative load on that rotor system. Mm-hmm. Where in the Apache, you can have a negative load on that rotor system.
I think I'm correct in saying that the AH-1 has a similar rotor setup to the Huey, so you can have mast bumping and all that nasty stuff.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. You can get yourself in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
In an Apache, I think everybody has seen videos of Apaches rolling and looping, and which it can, and even right before I left, they did our operator's manual would always give you limits of plus or minus 60 degrees on the roll and plus or minus 30 degrees on pitch. Well, they started saying, okay, you're flying combat, you need to know what this aircraft can do. And it was called combat maneuvering flight. And they would take us out up at altitude around 3,000 MSL. And you start doing 120 degree banks and combine that with a minus 60 nose down. And you're looking at the ground through the rotor system. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it'll show you what the whole concept is showing you what the aircraft can do. And it's just so forgiving.
Right. Okay. Just superior engineering, superior design by the sound of it.
Yeah. That rotor system's awesome.
Oh, John. Okay. Very good. Right. Here we are. We've got Hey Y'all. Is that a Texas thing? Hey Y'all? Or have I got that?
That's a Texas.
There's a Texas. How about that? How long is the what is this saying? How long is the AH-64 pilot formation? Sorry about that. I don't understand what that is, so you'll have to figure that out. What are the steps you're going through? Do you think it'll be possible to operate the AH-64 in a single-seat version? Obviously, in the sim, it's different to real life. Will we be able to fly it as a single person? Thanks from Black Spark.
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly what he was talking about on the how long is the pilot formation. I don't know if he's talking about how long an average mission with flying in formation. I don't know. One of the things that we'll go out. We never went out single ship, so we were always a flight of two. Whether that was a one Apache escorting a Black Hawk or a Chinook, or two Apaches. Prior to 9/11 and those events, we always trained for the Cold War, and so it was always going out with a flight of Apaches loaded up with Hellfires and looking at Russian tanks. And so that's kind of what the premise was, why the AH-64 was built anyway. So tactics obviously changed quite a bit. But you go out in formation and fly, but it's a loose formation obviously in combat because of maneuvering. So I wasn't sure. Now, yes, you could fly. So, for example, like I said, if either the front seater or the back seater was shot or killed, the other person could fly it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second, now I've got to be careful not to get you in trouble or put you on the spot too much, but roughly thinking, in the game, or the sim version, we won't always have two humans. In fact, probably rarely will we actually have two humans ready to fly in a single airframe. Will they find a way in the sim so that you can just fly as a single person?
I do not know the answer to this because it has not come up. But I'm sure they're looking at, how the F-14,
right,
and
so an AI control, an artificial intelligence guy.
They'll obviously have to be. So, but beyond that, I really can't say.
Okay. Right, next. Hey man, interesting. I wanted to ask if there was any major flaw in the Apache compared to other helis. So I guess maybe an example would be like the Huey with its rotor design. Love and respect from Pakistan. Okay.
That's interesting. I think that probably just the aircraft today are so much more technical. They're basically flying computers. And right. So the last thing you want to do with your PC is to set it outside and let it get rained on, snow, 120 degrees, because that's basically what you're doing. So I think, going back to the Huey and somewhat of the Cobra and the AH-64A Alpha Plus, Alpha Chuck that I flew, it was so much more simple. So, and it didn't take 20 minutes to get all your systems up. You go in, hit a couple of buttons, and you start it and go. And so I wouldn't say it's a flaw for the Apache. I would say it's a flaw for all modern aircraft at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And the harder, like you said, the harder it is to maintain, the more problems there's going to be. We did also had the pleasure of a while ago interviewing an Apache mechanic. I forget his exact title, but he would be in the guts of the plane. And, and this isn't really a flaw. It's just how the aircraft was designed. He said compared to everything else that he ever saw, it leaked. Okay, so this aircraft, for whatever reason, it would just be constantly spewing out oil, spewing out fluids, and kind of reminds me back in the 60s of the SR-71, like spewing out fuel because just how it's designed.
Well, I can tell you, Cap, I wouldn't want to fly an Apache that didn't. Because then that's normally something would be wrong if it was completely dry and clean.
Right. Did we have any idea? I can't remember whether I asked him or not. Any idea it was all about tolerances and stuff like that? And
yeah, everything. And that kind of goes into, on the maintenance side of the house. And but there are tolerances on certain and transmission fluids and gearbox fluids, and some has to be over half, some has to just have some in it, so it is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Right, next, 14. So I've always wondered, how safe is it flying a helicopter compared to a fighter jet? What happens in a helicopter if you get in trouble?
Sure. If you're in a fixed wing and you have a major issue, you either need to find a long runway or a long highway to land, or you got to eject out. For us helicopter guys, it's all auto rotation for us.
Right.
And depending upon how good you are in the aircraft, if you needed to, you could set it down virtually anywhere. So I think it gives you a lot more options, but depending upon your altitude that you're flying at, you don't have as long of a time as you're gliding in a fixed wing. So, so it's kind of 6 1/2 or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of auto rotation. As an amateur like me, auto rotation is great when you're told something's about to be wrong and you've got some altitude. Like when we do, test it, we start ourselves off at 1,000 feet and we say, something's about to go wrong. You're turning the engine off. In combat, when you're going, flying at 100 feet and, you've got things buzzing around you and things happening. I've personally, again, I'm an amateur, but I've never managed to save a helicopter before from actual problem with auto rotation because, well, like you said, you very rarely got the altitude or the time to think about it. I can't think of any clever thing to say, but you've got anything to kind of add on to that?
Well, no, believe it or not, depending upon how fast you're going, how low you're going, I mean, there's a chart and dead man's curve and, what you can do. I will tell you, we had an incident with one of our aircraft. So you got to remember, I was in Afghanistan, so 2003. So it was pretty, we were pretty kind of at the beginning of everything over there. And we had a special lot of 30 millimeters and it was bad. We had, so one of our aircraft was firing, he was low level, fired the 30 and the 30 millimeter rounds actually inside the belt blew up.
Wowza.
And so it blew most of the gun apart, all underneath. They were lucky that they didn't receive any kind of physical damage, from that or shrapnel. But like I said, with the crew compartment, it's they've really taken pretty good care of the pilots. But he wound up not having to shoot an auto, but and we can get into, there's a backup control, it's called Bucks, but backup control flight system that was activated, and they managed to put that, do a roll-on landing, and right as they hit the ground and they were coming to a stop, I mean, they were still scooting. They noticed a ditch, so then they had to pick it up again, fly it again over the ditch, and then land it again. So he did a remarkable job of saving that aircraft, and they both got a broken wing award for it, which is kind of an award we get for a damaged aircraft. So, but yeah, it's you can be depending upon airspeeds and altitudes, auto rotation can be tricky, but I know a lot of guys that are real, back in the day, are real good at doing it.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I will, and I think there's another question about this. My father was probably one of the best at doing it. And so we'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay, awesome. Right, let's push on then. I've heard the pilot can use the MTADS/PNVS to look through the front dash with their helmet-mounted display and see the ground. But my question is, how far can you look down with it? Greetings from Netherlands. I think you need to just expand that a little bit for the viewers. MTADS, PNVS?
Yeah, so TADS, Target Acquisition Designation Site, and PNVS Pilot Night Vision sensor. So the M is modernized. So I flew A models and D models. So A models had the legacy FLIR. So first gen, and there's a big difference between what they're flying now to what I started out flying. So the M's for modernized, and it is a big difference. So your eyeballs, like, you think about this, your sensors are, I forgot what, 6-8 feet in front of you. So you always have to kind of remember that what you're seeing on your eye is, 6 feet, 7 feet in front of you on the nose. So, and roughly, if I remember correctly, the azimuth on the PNVS was plus or minus 90 degrees, plus 20 degrees up, minus 45 degrees down. And on TADS, it was plus or minus 120, plus 30, and minus 60. Now, the difference is that the slew rates, and this is always something that the Apache community is always kind of griped about. And I guess when we kind of go back to the flaw, this was one flaw. They made the slew rate of the PNVS 120 degrees a second. So when you move your head back and forth, it'll follow you exactly the way you're moving your head. Whereas TADS, if you're flying with the TADS, it's a plus or minus 60 degree slew rate. So it's half of PNVS.
All right.
So you have to kind of move your head a little slower, because if you just do this, you got to wait for the TADS bucket to catch up.
So there's like a lag, a latency.
So there is a definite lag, okay. And so that's just something that's inherent to alphas and deltas. I don't know if they fixed it on the Echoes. I really don't know anything about an Echo at this point. But that was always something that we had to struggle with as far as the flying with TADS, was the slew rate.
Weird, wasn't it? I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why, but and just for the layman, what we're talking about is this kind of sensor array on the nose, right?
That is correct.
Right. It's interesting. I've never really looked at it closely. You've got kind of three cameras. I don't know what the word is for them.
Yeah,
sensors.
You have a day side and a night side, laser rangefinder on the TADS, and then you have the PNVS. So, and of course it's got all the night stuff on it. Now you can still fly during the day with the symbology and everything. And the other thing that I noticed, if you're in a dusty, sandy environment, you've got a camera right out on the ball, or get a camera right out on the nose of the aircraft. And so if there were times that I actually turned on the PNVS during the day to see a landing place, whether it's
clever.
Landing arming pad or something like that. So you can do that as well.
Yeah. Got quite, I see. I'm just looking at a picture from the front here, and I'm just looking at the pilot's head. You've got an okay line of sight, but I see what you mean. That you can't see.
If you think about this, so as you're coming in, your nose is up.
Right.
So you really cannot see right over the nose.
Right.
So you're looking out your left, and your right and your left and stuff. So there were times that if I was flying over trees or wanted an arming pad, I would turn on the pinvis, because your eyeball is right on the nose of the aircraft. So that's what and that was just a technique I used. I had an old instructor pilot tell me about it. And so he said, there's nothing that says you can't use the pinvis during the day to help you.
All right. Very good. I shall try and remember that then. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Again from the Saint. In an all-out punch-up between the Apache and the Black Hawk, who do you think would win? Well, I didn't think the Black Hawk was in a combat helicopter in the same way, but do you have an answer for that?
Well, the black, as he said, Black Hawk or Black Shark?
Oh, sorry, Black Shark. So the one that we've got, which is like the Ruski version.
I've never flown a K-50, so I don't know the maneuverability. I know. So back in the day, I went through a course with the A model when we were putting stingers out on the wings, and Apache's awfully maneuverable, and if you had those stingers on board, I would say I'd give myself an Apache with some stingers, and I think we'd do it all right.
Generally speaking, in real life, the AH-64D did not have any air-to-air weapons. Am I right in saying that?
That's correct. That's correct.
Right. Okay. So that's gonna. Could you potentially, theoretically, still use the gun to fire against an air target, even if you don't have an aiming system for it?
Absolutely. And if I had to, I would. The problem is that unlike a 20 mic on a lot of the fighters and everything, the chain gun's a slow bullet.
Right.
And so it does a lot of damage once it hits, but it's not a good. I wouldn't consider it a good air-to-air. It's
going to dip and yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's one question that I will answer then. It's going to be Apache versus the Black Shark in DCS, and we're going to have a few dogfights ready and see what happens. Okay, that can get ugly. Right, very good. Question 17. The AH-64D longbow has the radar mounted on top of the rotor. So, does this mean other versions don't have the radar? How do you spot targets? Is it all optically?
Yeah, so the question, or the answer to that question is not everybody, it was not designed for every aircraft to have a radar on it. And the radar was supposed to go do its thing and then send all that stuff to all the other aircraft. And I know you and I've talked about it. I don't want to go too much beyond all that with the radar stuff, but even with a radar bird, you can still spot targets with the FLIR or radar. So you can do it with both.
So these aircraft, again, just stop me if you don't want to talk about anything, but the kind of idea of these aircraft is you have a flight of 4 or 8, whatever a flight of longbows is, and you have, I don't know, maybe 2 that would have that radar on top, and they would be feeding target information via data link to the others. That's the whole idea of how this was designed, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it would be, what it would do. And so you might just have, in a flight of 4, you may have one radar bird, in theory, that's supposed to go out, do its thing, and then via data link send everything to the other aircraft.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, we'll almost certainly have that function in our sim, so look forward to seeing how that works. Okay. Absolutely. Right, very good. 18. Do ground units have IFF? That's interesting. So you can know whether you are targeting friendlies or not. Do you have to confirm a target from multiple sources before firing? Now, this is really interesting. This is all about IFF, knowing who you're shooting at. I've got a few things to say, but what's your kind of proper answer?
Yeah, sure. So we use different, whether it's day or night, different ways to, see whether it's sparkles, FLIR, or whatnot, to see what where the ground guys are. Sometimes day is panels. The other thing is, and I know this is real simplistic, but a lot of the times, they'll give you, exactly their 8-10 digit grid, and you can mark that on your map inside the aircraft, and it's funny, you can even mark it with a little blue friendly symbol in the aircraft. At night it gets tricky, but you have IR pointers and all kinds of stuff that you can see where the friendlies are. So they don't have an IFF per se that you're pinging, but they have some things that you can use. And like I said, I don't want to go into specifics, but there's some things that they have that you can tell.
Right. Okay. Well, that varies with, for instance, the aircraft equivalent, the A-10. The modern A-10, if you look around with your helmet-mounted display, and you can see symbols appear where tanks and stuff like that are, and that is a radio IFF system. And in my infinite wisdom, as ever, I've forgotten what it's called. It's an acronym, and if you go in DTS and you put the date later than a certain year, so it's accurate, and a vehicle later than a certain year, like a modern Abrams tank, and you put it somewhere on the ground and you fly your A-10 by it, you look at it in your helmet and it will show blue, whatever the symbol is, I can't remember, and that's because it's got this radio IFF system. So we didn't have that, as far as I'm aware, on the Apache, and I'm going to guess
we never had anything like that now, like I said, with the radar stuff, yes, but visually, just flying over something, I did not have a symbology in mind saying friendly or enemy or everything. So a lot of the times too is when I was flying air cover, and it was actually troops in contact. In Afghanistan, it's really difficult because of the terrain, the mountains and everything. So I would have the ground guys that I'm working with. I would either have them fire a smoke grenade or tracer fire on a particular area. And then what I would do is, and I don't think they even use these kind of rockets, but I used white phosphorus. I would use a single white phosphorus rocket, and because it's when it blows, it's extremely visual. And so we would mark, then the guys, I would have my wingman, after I rolled out, he would get ready to roll in, and they would tell us, write 50, add 50, then you're on target. So then we would fire another white phosphorus. And then if they said that we were, right in that area, then we would just kind of unload in that area.
Right.
If you're doing a Hellfire, you absolutely have to visually, optically see what you're firing, unless you were firing, unless you have guys on the ground that are lasing a target and you have permission to launch. They're the ones that are going to give you the launch authority because they're eyes on. But that's kind of how we, roughly what we did.
Roger. And that kind of the idea of what you were talking about there differs from our sim, at least the way we use it. Because for us, if friendlies get shot, it's not the end of the world. You just click respawn and you're alive again. So we tend to just go in all guns blazing. Enemy are roughly over there, fire the rockets, but in real life, you can't do that, right? So it's it's the worst thing in the world, obviously, to damage friendlies. So you got to be careful, and like you said, you got to be talking to your guys a lot. Where are the bad guys? Can you put some red tracer over there? How close is my rocket?
So one of the things that we did, and they had like I said, it was in 2003, and so we were working with Navy SEALs, and of course their budget's a lot more than ours in those kind of communities. And so at night, that's the another bad thing about FLIR is you cannot see, because of the IR spectrum, you cannot see an IR pointer. So the way we would always do it is the front seater had goggles down so he could see. We had an IR pointer on the 30 millimeter, and so he could slew that. They could see where we were pointing. He could see, the front seater could see what the other ground team was doing, and then from the back seat on my symbology, I could see where my front seater was looking via symbology, and I would just line up the aircraft via symbology.
Yeah, right. Okay. And the only other thing I've got to add is that obviously these systems and these techniques are all born in blood, obviously. Unfortunately, and I may get this statistic wrong, but the idea is that I think it was Gulf War One. I think it was the first air-to-ground kill of Gulf War One was an Apache on a friendly. I think it was an M113. It just showed.
Colonel Hills.
Yeah.
He was the one who did it, and the thing about it is with that incident was because of that incident, one of the exams that we have to do. So we have an aerial helicopter gunnery skills test that we take twice a year.
Right.
And like the last few pages of it's about a 50 question exam. Is identifying vehicles via FLIR.
Right.
And so they'll have different threat systems, but not just the pictures of the vehicles, but it's what they look like under FLIR. And you have to identify them. And that is something, as we start getting with weapons that go longer and further and farther, that's just something that is something inherent in danger as far as fratricide is concerned.
Right.
Absolutely.
And just roughly tell me how that. Are you sitting in a simulator or something? How does that? You're looking at.
No. What they've done is they've actually gathered the pictures of the vehicles. Well, we do it both ways. So the helicopter gunnery skills test is a written exam. All the pilots sit in a classroom. We are required to take it twice a year. That's part of our gunnery. Before you have to do it before and pass it before you go out and actually shoot with aircraft. And then there's two tables, and I think it's table 6 and 7. Or 5 and 6, maybe. I think it's table 5 and 6 that you do in the simulator, day and night. And then once you pass it, then you're basically allowed and qualified to go out and fire live ordnance with the aircraft, which we do every single year. You have to be qualified every year.
Right. Okay. And you'll be happy to know it's not just you guys. I've recently interviewed a SAM operator and a JTAC, and again, twice a year, he had to sit through hundreds of slides saying, that's an F-15 at 30 degrees left. That's a flanker, because he's got to know exactly what he's shooting at all times, right?
We very much. And that's the other aspect, too, I think a lot of people don't understand is the amount of studying it's fun to just hop in an Apache.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more that goes along with just, hopping in for that 2-hour flight.
Yeah. No, of course. Yep. That's why it's a profession, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Excellent question that was. That really got us going. Okay. Question 19. What made you want to fly helicopters? Does the US have a version of the UK Cadets where you can join early as a youngster?
Sure. Yes, we have service academies. United States Military Academy is at West Point. Naval Academy, Annapolis in Maryland. They have a Coast Guard Academy. So we do have a lot of those service academy training programs, ROTC Reserve Officer training programs in college, warrant officer training. Have to go to warrant officer flight school and warrant officer candidate school first, and then on to pilot training. So there's various forms that you can do. You have different routes to go to earn your wings. So this is kind of what I was talking to you, Cap, about earlier on kind of how I really kind of started my aviation career. So my father was the chief pilot for the state police for all of Texas.
Right, cool.
And so he controlled all law enforcement aviation in Texas for the state police. Well, he went through the Bell helicopter test pilot program way back late 60s, early 70s. And so I grew up. I remember Bell Helicopter would bring a helicopter for my dad to test out. And I was 5, 6 years old, and I would sit in the front seat with my father. So, but for about a year, he and his partner were flying about 5 hours a day, and 2.5 hours in the morning, 2.5 hours in the afternoon, and all they did was auto rotations for the entire year.
Wow. And
they got so good at it that it was not just you can do an auto rotation, 100 knots at 100 feet. You can do it, and they would practice it. And I've done it in AH-64A in flight school. Is you just basically maintain as you lose your engine, you're still going at a pretty good clip. You just have the collective down, but you're bringing your cyclic back and aft, so you're maintaining your altitude, but you're just slowing yourself down.
Right. Yeah.
And so they wound up doing 180 autos, 360 autos, and all kinds of auto rotations. So really and truly, from an early age, I was around aviation, fixed wing, and helicopters. And when you put a 5 or 6 year old in a helicopter, you kind of get the bug.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what happened with me. Is I knew that it was just what I wanted to do, and that's exactly what I did.
That's interesting, because every single pilot we talk to, we ask the same question. It's almost always a carbon copy, not necessarily the story, but it's either my parents did this or my uncle worked with this type of plane, and so I had, it's imprinted as a kid, and it just seems you can't get away from it, which is good, obviously. But
it was always in my family, because my grandfather was pilot in command of a B-24 bomber in World War II. Mm-hmm. So it was just, it was always kind of in the family. So, I just kind of kept on.
Yeah, awesome. And obviously that shows how important it is to expose youngsters to things like this. I've been asked by the stream, ask about JROTC. Sorry if you did mention this, but does that mean something to you?
Junior ROTC. So, yeah, I know we did not have that in my high school, but it is a good program for the individuals that already kind of know, because I knew from, like I said, an early age what I wanted to do. So I kind of, steered my life towards that direction. But I think if you have, if your listeners are out there and, they're wanting to go this route, I think the earlier the better. Right. So, if your school has a junior ROTC program, it's exposure, Cap. As well as I do. The more you get exposed to, the better off, the more well-rounded of an individual you are. Yeah. So I would highly encourage, any listener that you have, that if they have that at your school and that's the direction that they think they're going to go, try it. Absolutely, because that's what it is, exposure. And, you try it, you may like it, you may not, but at least you've tried it.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Well said. Okay. Question 20 is a repeat. It was just talking about which is your favourite helicopter, so we'll skip that because we've literally done that. Next one, I've just been reading ahead. You may not be able to answer, but let me ask it anyway.
Okay.
Hello, Cap. What is the combat radius with a heavy loadout for armour? Also, what is the preferred loadout for maximum distance? Greetings from Rodog. So let me just ask that again. What is the combat radius with a heavy loadout for armour? And what is the preferred loadout for a maximum distance, if we're allowed to talk about any of that?
I think I'm going to skip that one.
Yeah, this is where we got in trouble. So I've recently got in trouble. As I understand doing these things, I will get in trouble eventually. And I did. I was for talking about just something really that sounded stupid. It's talking about the physical factor, how many bullets you put in an aeroplane, right? Yeah, how many you load in. I never thought you got in trouble for it, so be it. So this is the kind of thing I have to be careful of. How many miles can this do? How many bullets can that take? How many AMRAAMs would you load onto this plane? That's where you start getting in trouble. So we'll skip that one, guys. 22. Hi. Is there some sort of rivalry / competition between fighter pilots and fighter helicopter pilots?
Oh, well, there's yes, and there's a lot of competition between the airframes.
Right.
So, but helicopters. So, between Chinooks, Blackhawks, and Apaches, we used to give each other a lot of crap. Believe it or not, a Chinook is the fastest Army helicopter.
Cool.
It's shocking because it's so big, but they're really
doesn't look fast.
Not loaded up, they're fast. And so I tell you, one of the things that we hated the worst as an Apache guy is having to tell them to slow down. Because that was just bad for us, because we knew as soon as we landed, we got back home, we were going to hear a lot of crap about it. But yeah. Oh, and there's joke. We would do jokes on all kinds of things, and so yeah. I know for a fact of us, we had stickers from our unit, and before a mission, we'd pass a Black Hawk or something, and put it, underneath underneath the belly next to the landing gear, and we'd just stick one of our patches up there. So just to do it, So there was a lot of rivalries, but and a lot of good friendships too, because I still keep in contact with all those guys. So, the majority of them. So there is a big rivalry, and I think rivalry is good because it pushes you. It makes you makes you want to be better. And so I think, it was always which unit's doing more, to push themselves, to train themselves, and you would put yourself up against another unit. The other thing is I don't know how it is overseas or UK or anything, but like here, they have readiness. Readiness. I'm trying to think of the word, but the arms inspections and all kinds of stuff that they do Army wide, and you want to have the top grade, so you're putting your unit as the top unit. So there's a lot of rivalries. In general. So I'll tell you another quick story is I had some old Vietnam helicopter instructor pilots, and right next door to us were the F-16 guys. And they couldn't give us rides in the F-16s, but our guys could give the rides in the front seat of a Cobra. In the front seat of the Cobra, the cyclics on the right-hand side, and obviously the collectives on the left-hand side, but it's just like being in an F-16.
Right.
And so our instructors would take those F-16 guys, put them in the front seat, and then they had a thing called, if I remember correctly, is SCAS, like Stability Augmentation Control System or something like that makes you hover it dampens out a lot of things and makes you hover it a little bit easier. So you could turn it off from the back seat. So our instructors would put the F-16 guys in the front, take them out, turn the system off, and then give them the controls. And they couldn't keep it within the football field. So, you do things like that all the time. So yeah, there's a rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing I've heard. Like I said, I've interviewed God knows how many people now, and I don't just mean pilots. I mean ground crews. I mean from top to bottom. Everyone's always competing with someone else, and like you said, that's a good thing. Especially when if you might go to war one day, that one might save your life from that. So absolutely interesting, very good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, where do we get to? Was the terrain in Afghanistan taking a toll on the choppers? So just to remind us, terrain in Afghanistan, is it sandy? I know it's mountainous, obviously.
Yeah, it's, really, as a matter of fact, they laid a lot where we stayed. They came in and put rocks down, big rocks, and that was to keep all the sand and dust down and everything. Yeah, it was a bad environment. I understand a lot of the Iraq stuff out in the desert's just as bad. The problem is that it's the altitudes that you're working at.
I see.
The altitudes are insane. You know, you're crossing, there's mountains over there that are, you know, 17, 18, 19,000
Wowza.
feet. And so you may be flying at, you know, 14, 15,000 feet MSL and 800 AGL, you know, so flying, you know, covering a ridge line or something like that. So I think the hardest part about flying in Afghanistan, and it made me a much better helicopter pilot, is power management.
Right.
Because you just don't have excess power. So you got to be able to land and take off with minimal power settings.
Well, that's really interesting. And in our sim, it's modeled pretty well. And it took me a while to respect how sensitive helicopters are to altitude. Now, aeroplanes, yes, obviously aeroplanes are also sensitive to altitude. You can't do big maneuvers and stuff at 40,000 feet. But generally speaking, a big fast aeroplane will happily go along at 40,000 feet, maybe even above. Now, a helicopter is so much more sensitive for physics that I just don't understand. It's all to do with density of air and whatnot. But a Huey that we drive, an old UH-1H, you get that up to about 8,000 feet, and it is constantly on the edge of A, overheating from charging the engine so hard, and B, just falling out of the sky. It is horrendous.
Oh yeah, and so I had there were times, you know, we were above 14, 15,000 feet, and so it's crazy. It's crazy.
Powerful chopper to be up there, then, isn't it? It's a powerful chopper to be up that high.
Yeah. I mean, it is. The 64 did an amazing job. You know, considering you know, the environment that we were flying in. I never had that issue. I think the one of the scariest things for me was we got caught in some in the wintertime, got in the mountains in some icing conditions. And that caught our attention.
What effect would that have on you?
Actually do what?
What kind of effect would that have on you, on your helicopter?
Torque. If you would lose torque, because if the building up on your rotor blades, it's very similar. It'd be the same thing as if a fixed wing was encountering icing and it was icing on the wings. You start losing lift. And so we started getting into some icing conditions, and they were pulling us off of the mission just for that reason. So that caught our attention, because, you know, as helicopter pilots, you're generally not exposed or flying at altitudes where where you're even worried about ice.
I mean, in my F-16 and my F-18, that's normal. We've got a big button saying anti-icing. We put it on, and it heats our leading edges up, and it does whatever it does. Your helicopter's doesn't have anything like that. Well, exactly, because in the factory, when they're designing these, they're not saying this is something that's going to be exposed to these temperatures. There is anti-ice on that, but it drastically, if it is connected in the aircraft, then it takes up so much power from the engine to do anti-ice that you would have a difficult time flying in the mountains, you know, over there. It was just one of those things. Okay. Well, that was really interesting learning about that, because that was really interesting. Again, that's stuff we're all going to come across soon. So, very good. The next question we'll skip. It was basically, why did you do helicopters instead of jets? And we've literally had you answer that already, so that's fine.
There you go.
Question 25. What is the most demanding mental thing when you're flying a combat chopper?
I think it goes down to kind of what we were talking about earlier: situational awareness, where the friendly units are, where the enemy is, and mainly where the friendly units are, because you're operating in and around them, and you're everything off around them. So working with that, I probably the radios, because working with different radios, air to air versus air down, and switching back and forth, having multiple conversations with people. It's always funny. My wife always gets a big kick out of me, because I can sit down at at a dinner with 10, 12 people, and there's different conversations going on at once. And I can just, over years and training and everything, I can follow all the conversations at the same time.
Well, that's really interesting. So,
yeah, and it's the same way as far as with the radio in the aircraft. I mean, but it is mentally taxing, and that's the most difficult thing as far as flying combat is flying the aircraft. But you get to a point where flying the aircraft is so natural that you don't even think about flying the aircraft. It's the battlefield, it's the situational awareness, it's all of that, and employing that aircraft as a weapon system. So
right, and I'm going to guess that is especially relevant to you because you're you're in there with the troops. You're at low altitude. Whereas maybe a standoff aircraft at 30,000 feet doesn't need to know as much as you. You need to know really everything, and so you've got to be talking to.
No, you're absolutely right, Captain. But you do the exact same thing on some of your videos. So, for instance, like some of the Grim Reapers, y'all are, like you're flying a Harrier and you're going to a valley and you're hitting an aircraft gun or something like that, and you got several guys getting it from different directions. Well, think about just like how you're talking to all those guys. It's kind of the same way. Okay. Is that the communication is just got to be there. Yeah. And there was a saying, I had an old instructor pilot tell me, silence is deadly. So if you're not saying anything, that's you're missing an opportunity. You got to be talking to other aircraft, and when I say that, that's right when you're trying to pull triggers and trying to say, you got to really be talking, letting everybody know, what direction you're coming from, okay, hey, I'm in hot, coming south to north, I'll be over your left shoulder or your right shoulder, what have you, talking to the ground guys, so it's that situational awareness talking.
Roger, and that's just brought up another point quickly, that something I used to see all the time when I was teaching kind of noobs in our sim was that what they couldn't do was fly the plane and do the talking at the same time. And obviously, as you know, you need to build that, whatever, I don't know what the word is, independence maybe, to be able to operate your airplane, be doing all the buttons and all the bits, and having basically a conversation with someone, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where I say that the flying come just naturally. I mean, you can't even think about the flying because you're doing so much of the other things.
Cool. Very good. Right. Okay. Question 26. Are there any capabilities towards air-to-air in helicopters that you've flown? May be not towards jets, but other choppers. So he's talking about any helicopters that you've flown. Have you ever had any air-to-air ability? You talked about the Stingers briefly on certain versions.
I never flew. I went through the Stinger course on the A model Apache, and that was back in the early 90s. And what they were thinking about doing, but we never did. Instructor did go through, had an air-to-air course at Rucker, late 80s, I believe it was, and he was a graduate of it. And I remember I was in the front seat of the Apache, and took me out. And this was an A model back in the early days. He took me out and he blew my mind away on what that aircraft could do. And we were literally, he was showing me air-to-air maneuvers of what he would do. And so so I was in the cockpit, but we never ever did any kind of air-to-air training.
Roger. Yeah, absolutely. DTS, are you a fan of DTS, and do you fly it yourself?
So here's, I am a big fan. I have been putting together a system over the course of the year. I'm one of those guys that are going to probably spend about $5,000 selling the system. So I've already my TPR pedals. Speakers. I got a 32-inch curved monitor. I'm doing everything. So I bought everything. I've got the X56 with the Monster Tech table mounts. And so I've got all of this. So I'm waiting to let my wife let me buy a computer. So, and I think I told you, for all your viewers, my daughter has lived in London for the last couple of years, and she's been going through graduate school at the University College of London and Bartlett. She's got a master's in architecture, and so that's where my money's been going.
That's very expensive.
Years. So now that she's graduated, this last year I've been putting together the system. Now, what I have done is I have a laptop that I've been playing with Mission Editor.
Awesome.
So I've been, so I've downloaded it, and I've just been kind of going and going through everything. And so I'm going to say probably in the next couple of months, I'm going to be up and running.
Oh, great. Hopefully in time for the Apache as well. I mean.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the main reasons why, because they definitely want me to fly it.
Yeah, of course.
And give feedback.
Yeah, I was going to say, in all seriousness now, we've finally, after 5 years, got to the point where we are attracting real pilots. Like I said, we've got a guy flying with us that basically mirrors your credentials, probably different years, but we've got 4 total now, RAF pilots that come and fly with us. And so, once you're up and running, definitely come and, we're always open and receptive.
Absolutely would love to, because I've been watching y'all's videos for, like I said, the last couple of years. So I kind of feel like I'm an adoptive member of the Grim Reapers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Very good. The next one is all about fantasy. Yeah, just pure fantasy. Like, Ferrari is my favorite car, for instance. What is your all-time favorite aircraft, so plane or helicopter, and why? Any age.
Okay, I would say a combination of P-51 Mustang and a P-38 Lightning.
Okay.
From that era, probably an F-4 Phantom Vietnam era, and probably the F-14.
Sexy planes. Those are good, solid, sexy planes. All of them.
I would say that. As far as helicopters, I'm obviously partial to the Jet Ranger. That's what my dad helped write some of the performance charts, height velocity charts from for the Bell 206. So that's obviously probably one of my favorites. So.
Okay. Very good. Very good. No, that's probably the best choice I've had so far. Okay. 29. Back to getting blown up. If for whatever reason the Apache is going down, what are the last lines of defense? For instance, do you have any energy absorbing seats and other systems that might increase the chances of avoiding injury? And back to your competitor, the KA-50 has an ejection seat. If I don't know if you're aware of that, it can eject through its own blades. I know you can't compete with that, but yeah.
Yeah, I can't. It's very well known that the Apache's got a lot of crashworthiness systems, whether it's the seat and the strokes on the seats give away, the landing gear and everything. So I think they really designed it the best they could to absorb as many G's and to protect the crew. So and I'll just kind of leave that. There are things in place and that are helpful to the survivability of the crew.
Yep, very good. Right. Question 30. What is the startup time from cold and dark to the moment you are ready to taxi and take off?
I think it depends on the crew, and it depends on how good you are. So when I was flying QRF in models, just to give you an example, we walked around. So I was always on night. So we did 12 on, 12 off, days a week, for 2 weeks at a time for QRF, Quick Reactionary Force. And so from the time you received the troops in contact call, you had 15 minutes to be at 100% in pitch pull.
Right. So,
but we had already had, when you go on that shift, you first thing you do, reflight the aircraft, you have all your stuff out there. So it's running to the aircraft, hopping in and going. And, when you do it so often, you can get really fast at it. Longbow, probably, you could probably do it in 15 to 20.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Right, when you do your walk around prior to mission, what are the main things that you're going to be looking for? And is there a certain pattern to doing the walk around?
Yes, there's actually a physical checklist, line item by line item, where you start and where you finish.
Right.
And there's all kinds of things that you're checking for. So the biggest thing to me is your blade, rotor, and fluids. Making sure your transmission, everything. Obviously, cowlings and everything are secured, whatnot. But you're checking out the main rotor head. Tail rotor, all that kind of stuff. If you see any cracks in the blades, thing that, and have seen some stress metal fatigue before. So there's tolerances, there's all kinds of stuff. And if you have any questions, concerns, that's why you have your maintenance crew there, and point it out to them.
My job. Okay, the next one, we've already talked about this. I'll ask it again in case there's anything you can add. Hi, if I want to follow your career steps, where shall I start? I'm 17 years old, that's fascinated by combat helicopters.
Yeah, sure. Like I said, JRTC or ROTC, and I don't know where this person
probably lives. America, probably.
If it's over here, then write to your congressman or senator. You have to have a congressional or a senatorial appointment to the service academies. And I can tell you they are one of the things that they look for is a well-rounded, not just a person with good grades. They're looking at that athlete that has, that 3.8, 4.0 type, grades, and who's involved in the community, who's involved. So that's why I said the more exposure you have, the more well-rounded you are, the better chance you have at succeeding in your career. And the other aspect is and I'm stealing this from another guy that I listen to a lot on his blog. He's a F-16, F-18 pilot. Make them tell you no. Don't just read something on the internet and say, okay, well, you have to have, this kind of hearing, this kind of eyesight and everything. And let's say you have 20/20 in one eye and 20/25 in other, and don't just give up. Make them tell you no. Go through the process, because I can tell you there are waivers for just about any and everything out there.
That's interesting.
So don't give up. Make them tell you no.
Okay, right, Mr. 17-year-old youngster, off you go. Question 33. Just a question about maximum safe G loadings for the aircraft. Is there such a thing?
Yes. So there is a max G rating for positives and a max G rating for negatives on the Apache and on the rotor system. Obviously not going to go into the specific numbers, but I will tell you that we don't feel the G's the way fixed wing guys do,
right?
Because most of our G's, even though it's a decent number, are absorbed through the rotor system. Now, I can do a negative G, a nose over in an Apache, and I've seen where my trifold knee board that was on my knee, it actually kind of came up.
Mm-hmm.
So I can feel things like that, and you kind of get that roller coaster feeling of you feel that, but in reality you're not going to G-lock in an Apache where you would as in a jet fighter.
Have you ever seen an Apache or a helicopter that's come apart, something broken because of a high G maneuver?
I have never seen it personally. So I've never, I literally have never, I don't think I've ever even seen a video of one that
I can't think of anything. No.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen one.
do you, and just to finish that off, in an aircraft, my F-16, I've got a little number on my HUD saying you're doing this many Gs. Is that something you have or not?
Yes, we do have a G meter.
Yeah, very good. Okay. 34. Is the Apache stable in more severe conditions, and is there enough reserve power if needed?
Yes, it's a very stable platform. It has a hover hold, that is really, really good. An attitude hold, altitude hold. So, if you ever got into a situation where you went inadvertent IMC or something like that, the first thing I would do was level the aircraft and hit attitude hold,
Right.
immediately, and then that way, and just climb out of it. But yeah, very, very stable platform.
Yeah, I mean, excess power is always useful. We noticed in our
Absolutely.
Zoom.
And here's the thing, Cap. I don't know. I think there isn't any probably military aircraft, fixed wing or helicopters, that they give you the operator's manual and tell you, how much you can pull versus, over temping or over torquing the aircraft.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now that I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a lot more that engine will give you, and a lot more the aircraft will give you if you need it, versus what the manufacturer, what the Army or Air Force, Navy says you can do with it. I can tell you, I've experienced it in combat, and I've spoken to a lot of manufacturers that deal with the engines and everything, and it'll give you a lot more than you're told it'll do. So, yeah, you do have a little bit more percentage to go.
Okay. Technical question: are the engines interconnected by a shaft or something? And if so, can you fly on one if the other engine fails?
Yes, and I've had to fly a D-model longbow with one engine at idle and the other one at 100%. I had a high side failure on my number 2 engine, which is on the right-hand side, and had to bring it back to idle, and made a roll-on landing at the airfield, and it was another day. But so yes.
Very good. I mean, obviously, that's how you'd want to design it, so that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
What is the radar frequency interferometer, RFI?
Yeah, I'm going to skip the RFI. And like I said, I just, really don't want to get into the RFI and the radar stuff.
Roger, that's fine. Next one, equally as baffling to me. Have you ever carried the AIM-92 on board? And I don't know what that is. Do you?
I don't know what that is
either.
I'm
going to go and look it
up.
up.
I never did.
Look it up. Stand by. AIM-92. That is a Stinger, and yep, we've talked about briefly.
Oh, okay.
You went for the training course for that.
That was like I said, that was back in the early 90s, and I went through the course. I never saw it on the aircraft itself, so but I did go through the course.
Roger, very good. I'm just going to say at this point, apologise for any background noise for the viewers. I'm holding my headphones up because they've literally just fallen apart in my hand. Right, very professional. What is the typical mission duration, and how long can you stay in the air if you are careful with consumption, if you're allowed or want to say?
Just an average of 2.5, 245. Depending upon, but you can take external logs tanks and fly longer. Matter of fact, my instructor pilot was the man who fired the first shot of Desert Storm. If you remember correctly, the first of the 101st went in and took those early warning radar sites out in Desert Storm, and he was flight lead on that mission. And that's what they did, is they actually had an aux tank on their aircraft. So yeah, depending upon, I've never done it myself, but I know that you can. Right,
very good. Okay. 39. Do you have terrain avoidance system to allow you to conduct night missions, and do you use night vision goggles?
Yeah, we don't have a terrain system like that, like the F-111 had, but there's that again. That kind of goes into the radar, and I'm not going to talk about that. But yes, we do have flight requirements for night vision goggles and flight requirements for NVS, so night vision systems. So again, they're two really different types of systems. One thermal and one image intensifying. And so obviously your goggles will, depending upon your illumination and your illumination charts on what the moon is doing and everything, you'll see, you'll have, obviously, if it's zero illumination, the goggles are going to be at one level versus the moon at illumination at 100%. So, because it's just image intensifying. So whereas thermals, so, like I said, so different. So, but we do have requirements for both.
Yep. Very good. Okay. What is the future for the Apache, in your opinion? Anything you can see coming over the hill? Any major changes? Anything?
I have some friends that fly Echoes, and they brought a lot of the power back that it needed. I would say the biggest future that I could see is just the improvements on the optics is going to be the best, because in reality that's your bread and butter, is your optics. And so I would think that more improvements on PINVS and MTADs is going to be where the future, is going to be as far as the 64 is concerned.
Very good. Okay, I mean, that was as far as we'd got. Now, while we've been talking, the guys have been adding some on, so we might as well blast through them, because they're probably based on what we've been talking about. 41. Are you aware of Have Donut, by the way, before I ask this? Are you aware of Have Donut? Probably not if you don't recognise it.
I'm trying to read it.
So that's okay. I'll read it out and I'll explain it as we go, because I get the idea. I understand what he's talking about here. Was there a program for chopper pilots that can be compared to the Have Donut program, where they teach you to engage Soviet combat choppers like the Hind and the Kamov? So Have Donut, for everyone out there, was where America acquired Soviet aeroplanes via various means, bought them, stole them, repaired crashed ones, and so on. And then what they did is they had a group of guys called the Red Eagles, who went over a couple of decades, and they were fighter pilots who flew things like the F-15 and the F-4 Phantom and learnt how to fight against these stolen MiGs, And now they're asking here, was there any such thing that anyone knew about of helicopters? I don't see why there would be, because you don't have dogfights with helicopters.
Yeah, I never flew against any of something like that. The only thing that is even close is there were some, I believe, Mi-8s in Afghanistan that were operational, that were being flown by coalition forces. You would see them there, at different places, but I never flew against one.
My John, very good. From all the choppers you have flown, you've done this already. We'll go over that one, I think. I mean, well, I'll read it anyway. From all the choppers you have flown, which one is the most enjoyable to fly, and why? Your personal feel behind the controls.
If it's just flying, I would definitely say an Apache, because it's a lot of fun to fly. It's a lot of fun to fly.
Okay, well. 44. Is it possible for the ground crew to rearm and refuel your chopper while it's hot, or do you need to shut down first?
No, what we would do is, so the fuel is on where you put the fuel in, is on the number 2 side. So we would shut down the number 2 engine. Number 1 would be at 100%, and blades are turning. So hot refuel is dangerous, and hot rearming is dangerous. So, but yes, you do it.
Yep, absolutely. Next one, I know who asked this, and I remember the same question was asked to the technician. Let's see what answer you come up with. What message do you get if the symbol generator, that's the symbol generator, fails on the A model? Any idea?
Oh gosh, it's been 15 years since I've flown an A model, so I don't even remember.
I can't remember, but I remember it's a trick question. There's a trick in there somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
I think that you could turn in the A model, if I remember correctly, you can turn the symbol generator on and off by yourself. Because I remember I had an instructor pilot that when I was flying the system and hovering, he would do that. And because sometimes, a lot of the times, you get so concentrated on the symbology itself, you kind of don't look at your other surroundings. And so I remember him turning that off. So that may be but it's been a long time.
Since it's a fair excuse, I'd say. Yeah. Which is faster and or more maneuverable, the A or the D model?
That's a good question. I'm going to say the A because it was a lot lighter.
Right. And that's the same in almost every airframe. F-16A, F-18A, maybe not the Tomcat, but most of the aircraft are lighter and they haven't had so much stuff added.
Well, and see, that's what you just said is exactly true. That's the problem with upgrades and add-ons. That's fine, and D model's a lot more capable in a lot of areas, but it's a lot heavier.
Right. Mm-hmm. Did you ever experience any aircraft emergencies? We've talked about your single engine, but anything else of note?
Sure. I would say I had the high side on number 1, or number 2 rather. And I remember in Afghanistan, we had a master caution come on. And I think it was main transmission chip light, which is something that you're supposed to land as soon as possible. I didn't. And I was saying some prayers to get me back to home base because we were in the middle. I'd left one fob and going back to the main base in Bagram, and the problem is that the Russians left 6 million landmines across that country, and we were always afraid of landing the aircraft outside of our authorized areas to land, because I literally was always afraid of landing on an IED. Okay. So I flew it all the way back with that master caution and main transmission ship, and I made it back. But I just figured I would go that route than landing. The other thing is you're in the middle of the mountainous desert. If you sit there and shut down and you're by yourself, the aircraft that your wingman can't just stay with you, and definitely just because of fuel, they're going to have to come out and secure the area and everything else. So that was really my I've had little things here and there, but never had I've never had an actual engine failure. I've had to take an engine back down to idle.
Right. Yeah.
So that's it. I was real lucky.
And just to help the viewers, when you talk about a chip detector, it kind of makes you think about like French fries and stuff. But what we're talking about is chips of metal that a magnet is detecting. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. So basically, if you get a light for a chip, it's telling you that there is metal or metal shavings coming off of a component, and it's attaching to that magnet. So it means that you could possibly have a fatigue or failure in a particular system.
Right, and a normal thing would be to land, presumably, and
Oh, absolutely, and shut down and everything. But I do have a couple of things I did want to show you. When I retired, the guys gave me this.
Wowza! Is that the 30 mic?
That's 30. So
jeez, do not get hit by that.
I'm trying to do it.
Yeah. Oh, look at that! It's got your name on it.
Yeah. So they put my name on it and everything. But that's your 30.
Yeah.
And then what I did, because I was a safety officer and I always had to go down range, and we'd have to clear the range after aero gunnery. There was always 30 millimeter shells left over. So what I did friend of mine and I did this. We made shot glasses out of it.
Yeah.
So you know, they're just you know. So we drilled out primers and bleached them and put some coatings on them and everything. And so I've got these shot glasses. And probably the other thing I wanted to show is I don't know if y'all know do you know what flechettes are?
I've heard of it. It's something I remember, like it's a type of ammo where it splits off into little horrible bits. That's all I sort of remember. Rockets and stuff.
I'm going to show these to you.
Ah, that's it.
All right, so they're actually nails.
Wowza.
With a little, you can see a little. Yep. So that's what they are. So I fired flechettes, and you know you can collect them out on the like I said range when you clear them and everything. But so think about this. I'm trying to get these to where everybody can see them.
So would these come from a rocket warhead or something? Am I right in saying that?
So these were actually fired. These were in the ground at targets when we did aerial gunnery, and I picked them up. One rocket, one flechette rocket has, I think it's 1,178 nails.
Whoa.
So that's one. You fire them in pairs, you're talking 2,300 nails in the air. So what they do, it is kind of like a shotgun effect.
Yeah.
So they explode outwardly just like a shotgun and BBs at a certain range, and it just fills the whole area with nails. So you don't see these very often, but I had them laying around, so I wanted to show you.
Cool, yeah, because I've always wanted to. You see pictures in like with the warhead all together, but you can't see what it's like with them all apart.
So yeah, that's it right there.
Do not want to be on the bad end of that, if I'm honest.
Absolutely. So
right, okay, that's that. I'm just reading stuff that you can't see this, but I'm just rather regarding the have donut question. We have a video here from Mark Felton on when the US, I'm going to say stole actually, Hind helicopters. So I think that's quite interesting. Very good.
Okay.
Yeah. That's that. I'm just about out of time. It's been a couple of hours here. First of all, thank you very much for your time, for giving up a couple of hours and reviewing the questions and stuff like that. That's great.
It was my pleasure. I
get the feeling that I obviously get on quite well with you by the sounds of it, and you're obviously coming into DCS now, so I get the feeling we'll be talking again in the future for whatever that is. Maybe when we get closer to the release of the simulated version. We're doing this for another aeroplane as well, the Typhoon. Maybe we'll have you on again for questions more specific to what we're going to get in the sim, and you'll be more clued up as well then.
Yeah, absolutely. So all I'll say about this is what I've seen so far. I'm really impressed. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, everything they do, the ED guys, all their planes are top notch. Not just saying that.
Yeah, they're doing a really good job. So.
Great. Whoa. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to put that together, and I will speak to you at some point in the future.
All right, man. Cheers.
Right. Ta-ra. Bye.